So hello, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, but I'm back to talk about some more classical records, and something that I did last night was a little bit of a shootout between a lot of different pressings, but mainly for this new Deutsche Grammophon release of Symphonie Fantastique by Berlioz. And this is conducted by Seiji Ozawa and the Boston Symphony Orchestra. This is part of the new Deutsche Grammophon original source series, where they essentially go back to their original four-track tapes or whatever it is, and they cut them from that directly. And my previous video, which was quite a long time ago, was discussing the sound of Deutsche Grammophon records. And Deutsche Grammophon, in my eyes, has always been kind of a mediocre company in terms of sound quality. I loved a lot of the interpretations. I'm a big fan of Karajan, Abado, Seiji Ozawa as well. I think they do some fantastic recordings with the Berlin Phil, in this case the Boston Symphony Orchestra as well, including those Steinberg recordings that are going to be coming out, I believe, in January of 2024. But I always found their recordings to be quite mediocre in a sense, but this new series has really breathed a new life to a lot of these older recordings that are definitely better than what the original sounded like. My favorites so far have been the Beethoven 7th Symphony, the Rite of Spring that they released, and the Mahler's 5th. Just in terms of sound quality, I like Bernstein's interpretation more from the Columbia box set, which is actually just right behind me. I can't show it. But those are some great sounding recordings. They're a little bit hit or miss, to be honest. But today I wanted to talk about this particular recording and shoot it out with a bunch of other pressings that I have. So I'll just go in order of the way that I attained them, in a sense, roughly, essentially. This was the very, very first version that I got, and this was honestly before I even really knew, types of recordings for analog, digital. This is Munch recording with the Paris Orchestra, Symphonie Fantastique. It's a digital recording, and they even say on the back down here that it's recorded in 24-bit 96 kilohertz. And so this is really before I really knew anything. I just thought, vinyl, have a record player, let's just buy this because I like the symphony and we'll see how it sounds. So that's one. The second one is actually an original living stereo, also Munch, but this time with the Boston Symphony. So a lot of Boston Symphony recordings, actually, and Munch is quite popular with this as well. And this is actually an original Canadian pressing. As you can see on the bottom, it says printed in Canada, and you can also see on the label that it says Montreal. In this situation, the dead wax, it doesn't say, what is this? -2 something. I would like to just point this out, and I want to make a video about this in the future as well, about Canadian living stereos. A lot of the really early Canadian living stereos actually used the same stampers as the US living stereos. Just be careful that it's actually stamped in the dead wax and it has some sort of 1S or 7S after the code in the dead wax. They had obviously some kind of deal between them, and I've done direct shootouts between a Canadian pressing and an American living stereo pressing. Particularly, I have the Rhapsody in Blue, that living stereo Gershwin's, and an American in Paris. And they sound almost identical. The only difference is the stamper numbers. So earlier stampers are just going to be slightly better sound quality, but that's just a little sidetrack note. The first kind of audiophile pressing reissue is this one by Argenta. This is SXL 2009 Decca. This is one of the very, very first Deccas. I want to say recorded 57, 58. And you can see here that the very first Decca stereo releases were actually on, was SXL 2001, I believe, the 1812 Overture. This is SXL 2009, so a very, very, very early Decca, and this is the Speaker's Corner reissue, wideband Decca label, as you can see. The third pressing that I have is this Analogue Productions / Classic Records Everest reissue. This is a double 45 reissue, Sir Eugene Goossens with the London Symphony Orchestra. This was the most recent one and kind of what I thought would be the final one. And then we have this brand new one, the Seiji Ozawa Deutsche Grammophon Original Source series. So I wanted to get two pressings kind of out of the way quickly, and that is the digital recorded vinyl record here, and the living stereo Munch. Well, actually both Munches, but this 96 24, which I believe was recorded, or 2496, which was recorded in 1967. I have a lot of really great digital sounding recordings, a lot of great SACDs that sound really nice. Particularly, I love kind of a less known label, Pentatone, which released CDs and SACDs in the early 2000s. They sound fantastic. I love a lot of those. This is not well kind of restored digital version of this symphony. I would say that the strings kind of sound like synthesizers in a sense, you know, when you have like a keyboard and you can play the string kind of setting, it kind of sounds like a string, but not really. Generally, I would avoid this pressing. I got it very cheap and it's one of the very first records I got, so it's just something to show there. So I won't really be talking about that in the shootout later on. Generally, I love living stereos. A lot of times they sound fantastic. But you can see why Classic Records and Analogue Productions pick very specific living stereo titles to release. The Royal Ballet performances, Witch's Brew, these RCA Deccas, Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphonies, also Sprach Zarathustra, Strauss's. Those are all, or Fritz Reiner's Scheherazade, or Scheherazade, however you pronounce it. Those sound fantastic. Original pressings, reissues, the way they were recorded was fantastic. This one sounds strange to me in a way. It sounds very muted and very muffled, particularly the strings. And it kind of gave me an idea of why it was very selective of these reissue companies to pick very specific recordings. This was obviously not one of them. I do not believe this was recorded super well. It's just very muted, very muffled, kind of like someone put like some pillows over the speakers or a cushion or something like that. So this is another one that if you can find, I believe I got this at a Value Village for $1, and it's in pretty good condition. Like it plays VG+, like it plays in relatively good condition, but generally I would avoid it if you find it for anything more than $5 and not in good condition. So yeah, that's one to kind of keep an eye out for. The third pressing, the other three, so the Goossens Everest, this Decca, and the Deutsche Grammophon are going to be the ones that I'm going to be talking about. And in my shootout comparison, I mainly compared the first movement, which was kind of slow, nice string tone at the start, like generally should have some good spacing and soundstage, and then also the fourth and fifth movement for some more dynamic range, loud noises. And in the fourth movement, there's that fanfare, like the execution of the character in his opium dream and whatever. You can read the story of Symphonie Fantastique. It's a fantastic story and whatnot. But those were the three things that was mainly compared, and I have some notes here as well. Firstly, the Speaker's Corner, the Argenta. First movement, I think it sounds really nice. It generally has kind of higher treble in the strings particularly. And I don't want to say this is a product of Decca. I want to say this is a product of Speaker's Corner. It's a trend that I've noticed on my system particularly. Maybe it's different on your system. And I will post what system that I have in the description below so that you can kind of compare if you want to. But generally, I find that a lot of Speaker's Corners have kind of higher treble, and they also are just a bit more shrill in a sense. It's kind of a bad word, but you kind of get what I mean in that sense, that it seems like a little bit more in the upper range focused on those strings. And buying original Deccas that like London bluebacks for me in Canada, North America, which use the same stampers as Deccas, they sound more natural, and they really kind of put living stereo to the test in terms of who was the greatest sounding recordings of that time, or maybe Everest or Westminster or whatever hi-fi label in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s was the best. But generally I find that this has a little bit of a higher string tone. It has really nice spacing and soundstage, and I think the bass is really nice. It's really clearly defined, and it has some just nice trumpets, nice horns, and things like that. In terms of the fourth movement, this thing is like loud, like it goes really, really loud. The intro has that kind of little timpani. It's super in the back, so you kind of feel the spacing of the hall when you're listening to it, and the fanfare, everything is in your face. The fanfare is super dynamic. It goes from really quiet to really loud extremely quickly. You kind of feel like you're at the conductor's podium, less so that you're in the audience, so it's really direct and really forward and very, very kind of open and kind of shakes the room when you listen to it. So that's the Argenta. Those are the two, kind of the major points that I noticed in terms of that recording. Next, I want to talk about the Everest recording, which is recorded on 35mm magnetic film, and they kind of give you this on the inside to explain their recording methodology and why it gives you better sound quality. Who the hell knows how accurate that really is, and whatever they're talking about. Maybe it's snake oil, who knows. But this recording is drastically different from the Argenta recording. It sounds fantastic still. I would say that in terms of the first movement, the Argenta is a bit, this Decca speaker's corner is a bit kind of higher in the string tone. This is a lot more balanced strings. It kind of gives you that impression of more of a kind of living stereo in that sense. Really nice. It has really good spacing, and this is kind of the main difference. The speaker's corner is more direct and in your face, and this one is you're sitting kind of in the concert hall and you're watching them. So everything is a little bit further back. And that's beneficial in some of the quiet sections of the symphony, I will say. So the third movement, that is relatively slow. The theme kind of in the pastures or pastoral kind of themes of this symphony, it benefits there. You get that lot of spacing. The string tone is very nice. The woodwinds sound very nice. I like the French horns in the background on this recording also sound really, really nice. And I think that's beneficial for a few sections of the symphony, so the first movement and the third movement particularly. But come the fourth movement, I think it lags behind the speaker's corner. It isn't as forward, and you would like it to be more forward because of the way that the orchestra is playing. You can tell that they're playing quite loud, but it doesn't come across that way through the speakers. They're more in the background. And so if that's your preference, if you're kind of sitting in a concert hall and you're like, oh, they're playing loud, but I can't really hear them playing loud, then this recording is fine. The speaker's corner really gets up in your face and shows what Decca and what good recording can do of a classical setting, to really show you how bombastic and dynamic classical recordings can be. This one does not have that, so you never really kind of like sit in the back of your chair and say, wow, that's like super detailed, super clear, super in your face. So they're essentially opposites of each other, the speaker's corner and this one, where this one is more direct and forward and this one is more in the background. And a similar idea with the fifth movement, which is probably the best movement to compare in my opinion, because that has all the weird sounds. They start playing the violins with actually the wood of the bow to kind of get like the skeleton noises, and there's crazy sounds going everywhere, and the bells, and there's a lot of noises that are going around. And this one, again, more in the back, this one more direct. And then I put this recording on, the Seiji Ozawa, the new Deutsche Grammophon, and I must say this is by far the best recording of Symphonie Fantastique that I have heard. The speaker's corner and the Everest, Analogue Productions or classic records, they are really good pressings, but they have their flaws. The Speaker's Corner, as I said, doesn't have that great string tone, and who knows how an original Decca might sound. It might sound better because I have heard original Deccas and they sound great in the strings, but I just don't like the Speaker's Corner in this case. It's very direct, so you don't get as much spacing and as much of the ambience of the hall as you would the Everest. But the Everest doesn't really have that forward sound and that really kind of pushing in your face how good it is. The Deutsche Grammophon, on the other hand, takes both of those things and makes it better, I would say. The first movement, the strings are super lush and super smooth and fill the room, and the string tone is fantastic. I've always liked how the strings on Deutsche Grammophon sounded in general, but could never actually get the most out of them because of just the way that it was pressed. With this new original source series, they really do make it sound really, really, really nice. And the other pressings, all other 4 pressings that I've shown you, everything kind of seems more disjointed. And you could like that. It kind of sounds like you can pinpoint every single instrument and they're all kind of separated. This one, for some reason, sounds like the whole orchestra is playing together. The strings sound all together. It's super lush and super nice. And I thought, after hearing that Speaker's Corner, the 4th movement, like how forward and bombastic it was, I'm like, okay, if this one has better spacing, and if this one has a really nice string tone, similar to the Everest in a sense, then no way is it going to be as bombastic and forward as the Argenta. I was wrong. This delivers that, and I would say more. It has the spacing, you can hear the instruments, the bass sounds fantastic, just generally a real home run from Deutsche Grammophon for this one. It takes the best of these 2 recordings and improves upon it, and it doesn't have any of the flaws. And the 5th movement is like just incredible. You're really kind of sitting back and listening to everything that's happening. The sounds are going all over the place, the dynamics of the bass and everything is going everywhere, and just honestly an incredible pressing. And it reminded me a lot of Witch's Brew, the Analogue Productions Living Stereo RCA Decca, that I've reviewed previously on this channel, and I've discussed it. I went back and listened to it because I was inspired, because it's very kind of spooky in Halloween theme as well, now that we're near the end of October. Very spooky kind of themes, and I went back and listened to it, and obviously the RCA Decca is better, but the fact that that 5th movement kind of reminded me of that sound quality is a testament to say how good of a recording this really is. And so overall, this is going to be my new go-to pressing of this, and I would recommend it as well. If you love this symphony, you want a great sounding and the best sounding version of Symphonie Fantastique, I would highly recommend it. And as I said, the Deutsche Grammophon series is hit or miss, so I would highly recommend this one, along with Beethoven's 7th and The Rite of Spring. So thank you for listening. If you have comments, questions, concerns, leave them down in the comment section, and I will see you next time.